Hello, everybody, and welcome to Podcast Creators, podcasting advice from real podcasters. I'm your host, Greg, creator of Indie Drop-In Network and co-host of Fan Dummies. On the show today, we have David Rosen, host of Piecing It Together, co-host of Bird Road, musician and composer. We have a great discussion about the audio quality of guests, how important the back catalog is, and what parts of production do podcasters typically miss and how they can improve processes. It's a really fun conversation. Today's video is recorded using Riverside FM. All the links to Riverside, plus all the equipment we use on this show and all the equipment David uses on his show, will all be in the show notes below. All right, let's get going. David, welcome to Podcast Creators. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. We've been talking about this for, 2 weeks now, maybe? Back and forth, trying to figure it out.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm always on Twitter all day anyway, but it's nice having someone to talk with all day about when are we going to record our podcast interview.
Yeah, and what are we going to talk about?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, Twitter is an addiction for me lately. Like, I just feel like it's so different from every other social media that I'm on.
Yeah, I'd say like the worst part about making things is you have to be addicted to social media because otherwise you're just making things to just sit in your room and listen to or watch or do whatever with, for yourself. Yeah. And you want other people to experience those things. And so you just have to be active all the time.
Man, that is the truth. It's the sad truth, but it is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we first start with an intro? I know people probably already love you from this first 10 seconds here, but tell us who you are and your projects and give us the David Rosen overview.
Absolutely. Well, I'm David Rosen. I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada. I am a music composer. I compose music for films, commercials, for podcasts. I also put out albums of instrumental music. I also host the Piecing It Together podcast, which is a podcast about movies and the movies that inspire them. I also co-host the Bird Road podcast with my best friend Q, which is about politics and culture and stuff like that, and also just us hanging out and talking on mic. I also produce Awesome Movie Year, which is another different kind of movie podcast, and All Rice No Beans, which is a restaurant podcast, although that is on hiatus at the moment due to the pandemic. But once things are a little smoother, we're hoping to get that back on track.
That's amazing. That's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff that I have to balance, not even bringing up our family's record store, Wax Trax Records, which I also work in during the day. So, yeah, a lot of things.
So is it safe to say that you composed all the music for the podcasts that you're on?
Absolutely. Bird Road sometimes will throw in a track here and there that I didn't work on. But yeah, I did the themes for all the other podcasts. I also have been hired by a bunch of other podcasts that I don't actively work on, but did make the opening themes or interstitials or any of that kind of stuff.
Man, I'm going to have you create some stuff for this show. That'd be super fun.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about it after the show.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, so I always like to start the show with some geeky stuff, right? Because if you're on Reddit or Twitter or all the social medias that we just talked about, people are always like, "Hey, what mic should I buy? Like, who do you use for hosting?" Thousands of questions, and everyone has an opinion. So I want to hear, what do you use, and do you like it? Do you hate it? Give us the details there.
Sure. Well, when I am mainly the host of the show, or co-hosting, or just I'm going to be on mic, I use this SM7B, which I'm talking to you with right now. It's going through a cloud lifter into a Focusrite interface. I don't even remember which one it is, but it's one of the popular Focusrite interfaces. It does the job, basically. But yeah, the SM7B is my main microphone. I also have a couple of SM58s for when I'm out and about and doing the occasional live show or on location recording. But yeah, the SM7B is my main microphone. I am a PC guy. I use Studio One for my DAW. Although, anybody who just wants to use something free, Audacity is always good. I always tell all of my my clients, to make sure they have it installed just in case they need to record their own thing for like a backup or something like that.
Local recording is a critical tip. I hope people listen to this, because even if you're on like a Zoom call or something, fire up Audacity, get your local recording, and it'll change the game. I mean,
you never know. You just never know what could happen with these things. And they've come a long way in the last few years, but still, it's always good to have a backup.
Yeah, that just reminded me, I just hit record on my Rodecaster Pro, which I didn't before. So let's hope we don't need too much of a backup.
Nice.
So why do you use the different mics when you're traveling versus the SM7B?
Mainly because I'm lazy and don't want to disconnect all this stuff. And so it works out. It's also fairly expensive. I mean, this mic was $399, and it's like, I don't really want to have to bring it in a gig bag and bring it in, maybe it's going to sit in my car for a few hours, and I'm in Las Vegas and it's hot as hell out here. So, I kind of don't want to leave that. But, also, I mean, the SM58s, they sound great, and that's one thing, for people just getting into it. It's like you really don't need to jump right to the SM7B. Part of the reason I use this mic is it's less, post-processing that I have to do once I get to my DAW. It just sounds great, this thing going through that cloud lifter, and then it already sounds good. I do, of course, usually add a little EQ and compression and stuff like that. But generally speaking, though, it sounds great. The SM58 sounds really good too, especially if you do a little more post-processing after.
It's interesting. Like once you start buying equipment, you start to kind of nerd out on it, and you think, oh, I'm going to get this next mic. I'm going to get, this new interface. Like you really start to expand and try to tweak it for your own personal preference. But the audience, I doubt they can tell. Like if they're listening in their AirPods or in their car stereo, like, somebody in like a Hyundai, is not going to be able to tell the difference between, a 58 and a 7B.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as it's, a fairly clean microphone. And, that's another thing, like, half the time, well, and especially since the pandemic, that's changed things as well. Like, I don't really get to record in person that much anymore. Hopefully one day that'll be the regular I'll be able to again. But most of my recordings are long distance, like we're doing now over Riverside, but, sometimes over various other services. And my guests, they might be just talking into their Apple headphones, they might be talking into a Yeti mic. They might be talking into a webcam. You kind of can't control everything if you're going to be having guests on your podcast. And so, it's nice for me, for my voice. I always know that I've got this to talk into. Yeah. And so that at least covers half of the show. But the other person talking, that people are used to it, that not every voice is going to be, 100%.
That man, you're dropping these awesome tips like already. We're not even to the meat.
I'm full of them.
Yeah. So that's just to recap on that one tip. Your guest's sound quality is less important than the host. I think that your listeners always expect the host to sound like the host. Like you're familiar with your voice. They know your style. They kind of expect a certain quality from the main show.
Yeah.
But if you can get a celebrity and they want to talk to you while they're in a taxi or an Uber or on the phone or on speakerphone, like get that celebrity, get them on your podcast, ask them the questions you want to ask them, and, spice up the audio a little bit in post, do some noise reduction, add some compression, whatever. And it's going to be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. You work with that recording the best you can, but generally speaking, it's going to be fine. It's one thing if it's a garbled mess, then you've got yourself, you got your work cut out for you. But otherwise, if it just sounds a little tinny, people can live with that.
Yeah, I agree. So let's dig into piecing it together a little bit. And you can bring up, if you want to bring up Bird Road or any of the other podcasts that you work on, totally fine. But we'll just use piecing it together as kind of the touchstone because you're in 100% control of that show.
Sure.
Right. So maybe tell us where it's at today. Because I looked back and, is it 291 episodes from 2018?
That sounds about right. Yeah, we're actually for our main numbered episodes, we hit 197 this coming week.
Wow.
But we also have special episodes. I have these side series that are the same thing basically, but little twists on the format, and so those don't get the exact same numbering, and it's a whole thing. But yeah, I'd say the number that you just said sounds about right. It's been a lot of episodes. It's supposed to be a one-a-week show, but as it's a movie show, there's a lot of movies that come out. And even during the pandemic, there's still a lot of movies that come out. And if I want to cover it, I'm going to cover it. And then it ends up becoming a 2-a-week show. It becomes a 3-a-week show even sometimes. And as much time as I want to throw at it, that's how many episodes I'm going to make. But yeah, it's been a wild ride since 2018. And it started because, like I said, on Bird Road, the other podcast I do, which was the first podcast I did, I was always trying to kind of steer the conversation into movies because that's my favorite thing to talk about.
Yeah.
And, we had some fun conversations about movies along the way. But for Q, my buddy who we do the show together, it's more supposed to be about, what's happening in the world, not always about, what you're sitting around watching. And so
Sure.
eventually I was like, I should just do my own show, and why not? And that way also it kind of helped build out our whole thing because together we have this All Points West network, which is where all of our shows are hosted, along with a couple other shows that we work on. And so it was like, it's another show to put in the overall thing. And I kind of just started brainstorming what the concept would be because I knew I wanted to talk movies, but I didn't want it to just be a movie review show. There's plenty of those, and there's lots of great ones out there. There's plenty to listen to, and so I wanted to kind of do my own thing. And I do tend to like to talk about movies in terms of, it's this meets this meets this, and so I kind of centered in on what films inspired other films, and so that way me and a guest each episode will approach the film through the lens of what movies might have inspired it. And we're not doing it in so much of like a film school way where it's like, these specifically did inspire the film. Like we
Right.
have actual research into what the filmmaker has said and all that. And it's just more of a feeling of like, this feels like this seems reminiscent of that. And so this way we can come up with a fun list of things we think might have been inspirations. And for any film fans that enjoyed that particular movie we're talking about, they end up with a big list of other movies to check out.
I was about to say that because that's what happened to me. I hunt and pecked through your list, and which I think is what you do with a movie podcast, right? You
Sure.
Say, I really like, this one and that one and this one and this one. And you listen. And I thought to myself, I've never seen any of these movies that they're comparing this to.
Nice.
I did have to listen to obviously the Space Jam episode because who doesn't want to see a dumpster fire on fire? So,
Oh yeah, those are fun ones to talk about.
Yeah.
And anything goes at that point too because it's just like it's just craziness.
Yeah, it's a fun one. So I tried to, look at the ones that kind of interest me. And if you follow me on Good Pods, you probably think I'm a lunatic because all of like 2 days now, I've just been like clicking through them, and people are like, this dude listens to one podcast only.
That's awesome.
But so tell us like the current state of piecing it together. Like how big of a show is it today? Like what does an episode get on average downloads?
Average downloads, it's a tricky thing because it's still a pretty big range of what the average downloads. Now, are you of the school of what does it get in the first week, or are you the first 48 hours? How do you judge downloads?
Me personally, I look at episode download in the first 30 days. I do like, just for my own personal kind of gratification, I look at release day numbers because that kind of tells me, it gives me an estimate of who has their podcatcher set to automatic download and who is actually subscribed. But I think the idea is to just talk about a number that a indie podcaster could relate to. Like a lot of people talk about total downloads, which nobody can relate to.
Sure.
Right. So, what do you use? Like, what's your favorite number to watch?
Yeah, I like to look at where it gets to in the first week. That's kind of where I'm at because I know, everybody's different with how they listen to podcasts and how, soon they check their favorite podcasts for downloads and all that. For me, my episodes tend to generally be in the 80 to 150 range after the first week. The thing that makes me especially happy, though, is let's say I'm only doing 4 episodes that month, you know, so that, in theory at the high end there, should be 600 downloads. But my average monthly downloads is closer to like 1,500 to 2,000 downloads, most months. And so that means people are going back and discovering old episodes. They're watching a movie, maybe searching, a movie from, a few years ago or something. Let's say, I don't know, Parasite, the Oscar winner from a couple years ago. They finally caught up with Parasite, and then they go back and listen to our episode on Parasite. And so the fact that these shows, they continue to live and continue to get more and more downloads. And there are some months where I will, like, just randomly check back to some older episodes and like, that's getting numbers like as if it was just posted. Like it must have just hit Netflix or something like that. More people are seeing it. More people are discovering that episode. And then in turn, listening to more episodes. And so it definitely paints a bigger picture, I think, than just specific first week downloads.
I think you're absolutely right. And again, another nugget for indie creators is you need a back catalog. Like your podcast is not just what you release today.
Yeah.
It's kind of the combination of everything you've released up to this date. So it's really important to set your titles to something people can find it, because if you don't, then how would anyone find Parasite if you named it, Oscar winning movie from whatever year, right? Like
sure.
you couldn't do it. And also if you named it episode 16, right? Who could ever find it? So our show is the same way, where what you see in a month for an episode, right, is not the culmination of its downloads. And for Indie Drop-In, our true crime show does more than 50% of its downloads in its back catalog.
Right.
So every month. So it's, I mean, it's a mega amount of downloads for that show, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah.
So let's maybe go back to the beginning, because, you started with the Bird Road podcast, right? And then you decided to kind of go off on your own for this.
Yeah.
How did the first maybe 3 months go? Did you have a launch plan? Did you have a schedule? Did you have movies on your list? Like, just give us the info of how you got started.
I mean, first things first was definitely the plan. And I don't know so much that I planned out like a long term or anything like that. It was more so about figuring out what the show was going to be. So that way, once I started actually putting episodes together, I knew that I kind of had something in place for what they would be like.
Sure.
I created a rough outline of what I expected each show to be like, even though I wasn't quite sure. So that way when I recorded that first episode, it was already, it was pretty formed. I mean, the show hasn't changed that much in these 4 years. I've added a few little things here and there. I've refined how I plan each episode, and certainly expanded as far as my guests. I mean, at first it was mostly friends. I still have those friends on for occasional episodes, but now I'm film critics from all over the world and filmmakers and stuff like that. So, it's certainly expanded, but it's still the basic same premise that I had come up with of I record an intro. I then introduce my guest. If it's their first time on the show, let them introduce themselves, plug themselves, all that kind of stuff. And then we just go back and forth with our what we call puzzle pieces, which are the movies we think inspired this movie that is the main one we're featuring. And talking about those pieces. Each one, we kind of just go back and forth, any thoughts we have on it. And then I, as the host, will try to naturally move it on to the next one and the next one and the next one until we're done, get to some closing thoughts and wrap it up. And then I have an outro that I record separately. It's a outline that I feel like it works, and it makes it so that I always know what I'm kind of getting myself into. You can't always 100% know what the guest is going to be like, if they're going to fully, get the formula 100%. But
Right.
as the host, it's my job to, kind of lead them through it and hope that it works out that way. And so far, it's worked out great all the time. I've been really lucky with some really amazing guests over these years. But yeah, as far as like first starting off, that main thing is just knowing what I wanted the show to be. I can't imagine if I had just went in and said, all right, movie show, let's go, let's record an episode. I can't imagine it would have like been formed in any kind of real way where I would have been able to maneuver, all of the what's going to happen in the moments of actually recording a podcast episode.
How did you get the word out, though? Do you think, I'm assuming you announced it on Bird Road, and maybe that was your kind of seed listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. It was started off as spreading out from Bird Road, also just social media, the usual that I still do to this day, bugging friends, because friends have to kind of be the first listeners. And it's funny, I feel like friends and family don't listen as much as strangers do, which is a good thing, because I mean, who needs my friends listening? They're just my friends. But certainly when you're first starting out, though, that's who is going to be those first initial downloads, who people that want to, see this thing that you're doing. But yeah, social media is always like the number one way of getting the word out, and of course, sharing the episode and doing the whole back and forth thing, getting in touch with other people that are in the same niche, and
Yep.
hoping that they will be interested. And of course, in the process of finding guests, hopefully they check out the show and end up liking it, and they listen to it, and then that's the whole back and forth game of being part of the podcast community.
So do you remember back in the first initial months of your downloads, like, what do you remember about it? Like, were you discouraged? Were you impressed? Were you, what were your initial kind of emotions around the first few months?
Yeah, I was actually kind of encouraged, even though at the time I was like probably maxing out at like 20 downloads in the first month of any episode.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, there's like, I knew it wasn't my friends. Like I said, like they're how friends could be, but I knew it had to be random people on the internet who thought, oh, this sounds like an interesting show, and are listening to it, because I knew for a fact my friends weren't the ones listening, and some of them were sharing, which is great, and probably how we got those initial listeners. But the fact that anybody was listening is great, because you want to know that people are out there listening. It kind of drives you to keep doing it. And coming from my music background, when I put my albums, I mean, granted, my albums, it's not a rock band. It's it's dark, instrumental, electronica, new age, ambient, alternative type music. It's like, it's not exactly the most popular kind of genre, but getting people to listen to that is like pulling teeth. It's like, it's kind of difficult to get any kind of interaction with an audience with kind of a niche music genre like that. So I'm used to putting stuff out there on social media and not getting the biggest reaction in the world. And so the fact that anybody was listening is definitely an encouraging sign. But again, it starts off with small numbers and just slowly grows.
Sure. What do you think is the biggest weakness of your show currently, how it's set up?
I would say that's kind of a complicated one, because it really changes from episode to episode, depending on, I would say, my personal knowledge of the films that maybe I know, oh, this is inspired by Bond movies in general, but maybe I haven't seen any of those Bond movies in 20 years. And so I can't really dig deep enough into that history of Bond films to be able to speak on that. And maybe, if I'm lucky, my guest picks up the slack, and and they're like, oh yeah, totally, Dave, that reminds me of this and this from these specific Bond examples. And I'm like, phew, that worked out well for me. But I would say that, and time management, which kind of leads into that same exact thing, to want to be able to research and watch as many things as I can, so I have that vast pool to dig into for my puzzle pieces. I'd say that's like the number one difficulty is time management, especially when you're someone like me that has like a lot of different projects you're juggling.
So what do you say to the coaches, podcast coaches, and websites, and all of these places that say, you have to niche in order to get an audience? I scrolled through this, Piecing It Together show, and it's every movie you could ever think of. I mean, you've been doing it for so long.
Sure.
There are tons and tons of movies. I mean, 200 movies probably that you've talked about or more. Do you think that maybe niching a little bit would bring more people or less people to the show?
Well, I think, yes, there's a very wide range of movies, but I think the show itself still is a very specific niche, because it's not like, if you were to, like, say, go to Apple Podcasts and go to the film and TV category, you then have the separate sections. You've got after shows, you have film reviews, you've got film history. Right. I feel like the show itself is a specific niche, which is, I would call a deep dive. It's something that you listen to because you just watched a movie. It's kind of buzzing in your head, and you're like thinking about all the ins and outs of it, and you want something that's going to inspire more thought into the background of that movie, to the history of that movie and movies like it, and where a movie like this comes from. So I feel like that in itself is its own niche. And so I don't feel like niching down on the specific kind of movies that we talk about would really change things much, because it is kind of its own show to begin with.
Do you do anything to conjure listener engagement? Like, do you post the movies ahead of time that you're going to talk about, or anything around that area?
So social media has been pretty good as far as that's concerned. Twitter is probably my most active, but also we have a Facebook group that is tied in with the show. It's called Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. Yep. And I wanted to brand it separately from the show so it doesn't feel so salesy, the Piecing It Together, Facebook group or something like that.
Right.
And so, I came up with Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, and I keep the group closed, where it's invite only, or people can request to join, and they have a questionnaire they have to do. And that way people kind of feel like safe and comfortable to be themselves and talk about movies where, again, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about Friends or anything like that, but everybody's got that friend who's going, that movie's stupid. What are you talking about? Yeah. And so I just didn't want it to turn into one of those kind of groups where your friends see everything. I want it to be a community of people who want to talk about movies, and it's really worked out quite well. The group grows very slowly because of the way that I have positioned it, but the people who are in there are active, and they talk about movies, and they're respectful, and there's jokes back and forth and inside jokes, but I think it's turned into a really great little community, and that has been a great place to create some of that back and forth with listeners, because a lot of the listeners join that group and talk on the posts about the movies we're talking about on the show.
That's really amazing. I think that if you can get real life people to interact with you on something other than your podcast somewhere else, that's invaluable, because 99% of listeners, right, they listen. It's a passive experience, right? They listen while they're doing the dishes, mowing the grass, whatever it is. And to compel them to take an additional step is very hard.
It is.
To get them to do something.
Yeah, I want to do more contests on the show and stuff like that. But listener interaction is definitely it's one of the hardest parts, because, like you said, it's a very passive thing. It's very possible that everyone listening is driving their car and they want to enter your contest, but they forget about it by the time they get parked. It's like you just never know where people are going to be at any given time. So having different avenues of back and forth with them definitely like maximizes the possibility of people connecting in that way.
So let's kind of shift gears a little bit, and I want to talk about the production of podcasts, because you produce podcasts for other people,
Yeah.
and you'd like to produce podcasts for more people
Sure.
if you find the right fit.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, especially like I said, All Rice No Beans being on hiatus right now, I hope that we could get that one, back on track soon. But, it's certainly left a little bit of a hole in my schedule. It's just still incredibly busy. But I would like to take on another client at some point, maybe another two. I also would like to eventually do a narrative podcast myself. I have a few ideas for that. But that, especially with my music composing background, that's something where if I had the right story and the right collaborators, and then I could score the whole, story, and that's something that I would like to do in the future.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. So when you're talking about production, what are a couple things that podcasters typically do wrong that you would do right? And maybe they can take this nugget and do it themselves, or they can call you.
I mean, I guess the two things that I would say, and they're kind of both related. One is constantly trying to reinvent the wheel every time, and not having a set way of doing things. I mean, you should find what works and stick to it. And then, occasionally you can update that and make it better. But it feels like some people are starting from scratch every time, not quite knowing how to get their setup set up, or just leave it set up. If you can help to do that, leave it set up, know where your knobs go, know where your buttons go, know which software you're using, and keep doing that, because that way you can, it's almost like practice or exercise or whatever. You can just get in and do the thing, which is podcasting, which is having the conversation and putting it out there for the world. The other thing, and like I said, it's kind of related to that. If you're going to do your editing and post-production and all that in a DAW, I use Studio One. People use Audacity or Audition or whatever. Put together a template. It doesn't take that long to do. Learn how to do it. I'm sure whichever DAW you're using, there's got to be like a good YouTube tutorial on how to put it together. But have some of that stuff already set up. I have a template. I have a few templates, but for example, for a regular piecing it together episode, which is me and one guest usually, I have a template where the intro theme is already on a track called, songs and themes, and it's already on there. It's already mixed well. And then I have two interstitial pieces that I can move around on that track for however long they need to be. And I have the outro already on the track. Then I have two tracks, one for myself, and it already has EQ and compression and a limiter on it, just for it to already sound exactly how I want me to sound. The guest one, I obviously have to, adjust a little bit depending on how they sound based on their particular microphone, but I at least have a starting point, and then I have something on the master channel, so that way I know nothing's ever going to clip because I get that set up. And it takes so much of the time out of it. I don't have to be fiddling with this, setting up my tracks and all that kind of stuff. It's already there to go. Instead of hitting file, new project, I hit file, new project based on, template, and boom, I've got all those tracks already set up, whole bunch of the audio already set up in it and ready to go and have the conversation, which is the fun part.
If you would see my studio right now from the other side of the camera, I've got 3 tripods all set up. All my lights are where it needs to go. Like all I have to do is basically move a camera from one side to another for this interview, and then for my normal podcast, which we do on YouTube and things like that, I move it back over to the tripod that's still where it's supposed to be, and it really makes it much, much easier. Plus, the Rodecaster is already set up and ready to go.
Which is a fun little piece of equipment.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's really been a game changer for me because, I'm not a composer, music person. I really just have to plug in and make it happen. And I use Audition for that very same reason, right? I can come out of the Rodecaster as multi-track. I go into Audition, and then I can use like denoise and compressor, the plugins. It's super easy, and it kind of just gets it done. I do think, though, you gave me a couple of really great ideas. I do not have a template set up in Audition to where I can just go in and automatically, denoise and level and all the stuff that I do manually. I mean, I have favorites set up, so I click,
and you drag them all in or whatever, double click them. Yeah.
But I can clearly improve on that. So I'm gonna take that advice and I'm gonna make it work.
Nice.
So I appreciate
Awesome.
that. Well, I think this is a great place maybe to stop. Do you want to tell everybody where to find you, where to find your shows, and a call to action of what you would like them to do?
Sure, absolutely. Well, my main website is bydavidrosen.com. That's where you can find my music, also mentions of all the podcasts I work on. So you can check that out. Also, piecingpod.com is the website for Piecing It Together. And that's where I'm mostly active on Twitter, is @piecingpod. So if you want to connect with me there. And otherwise, I'd love to hear from you if you ever need, music for your projects or any producing work for podcasts, any of that kind of stuff. I'm always open to.
So you would take on a project to score an entire audio drama if someone wanted that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I just finished work on a feature film a couple of weeks ago. I'm working on a short film right now. And I've done little bits of pieces of music for audio dramas, but I haven't done a full one yet, and I'm certainly looking forward to it.
That's amazing. I can't wait. I'll put all of your links in the description box and show notes below. So, if someone aspiring audio drama creator out there trying to figure out, maybe they're stressed about the music, they don't know what to do, they've got a story written, but that's it.
Yeah.
They call you.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. As always, we'll put everything in the show notes so you can contact me. You can see all the equipment that we use. You can contact David and see all the equipment he uses, plus the shows, all of that good stuff. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye. Thank you so much to David Rosen, host of Piecing It Together, for coming on the show. I learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot as well. If you need any original music composed, or you need an audio drama scored, or maybe you're a movie producer and you need some audio scoring, I would definitely check out David. I'll put all of his links to Piecing It Together, plus all the things we talked about down in the show notes below. If you're an indie creator and you're looking to grow your show, you should check out indiedropin.com/creators for a chance to be featured on one of Indie Drop-In's shows. If you found this video valuable, give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell so you don't miss anything. We interview lots of podcast creators. If you'd like to see more, all you have to do is click one of the boxes right up here. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.